Because, my friends, sisters, and brothers, because to merely call it a declaration does not, frankly, do it justice. This was not a declaration, but a colonial act par excellence. Issued by a colonial power, not even in possession of the land it was giving away. The effects of this act reverberate today. The Palestinian people still suffer the consequences of what was and continues to be a grave injustice to Palestine's native population. Friends, I think it is often forgotten that the Balfour Declaration had two parts. One promised the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people, even though the Jewish presence there at the time was negligible. In fact, until the end of 1944, Jewish land ownership in Palestine did not exceed 6% of the total area of Palestine. The promise was really to European Jewry, not to Palestinian Jewry. The other was a pledge, the other part of the declaration was a pledge that this homeland should not prejudice the civil and religious rights of the non-Jewish population. Of the non-Jewish population. There is a lot to unpack here. Perhaps the first thing is to note that the breathtaking prejudice, I use the word deliberate, that this pledge is the evidence of that prejudice against the very native Palestinian people. The Balfour Declaration was an act of classic colonialism. One that had only the interests of the colonizers in mind and looked upon the natives as inferior. We were turned into non-Jewish population. This and thus, it is no surprise that the non-Jewish population has only, in that declaration, has only civil and religious rights. We had no collective, political, national rights. We can only pray. We had no right to self-determination, no right to statehood. The prejudice in evidence here is indeed staggering. Staggering. Not also that, but please note how the declaration robs the Palestinian people of our very identity, of who we are. We were not the Palestinian people in that declaration. We are not the land's native. We are not even the Palestinian Arabs. We are merely the non-Jewish population existing in Palestine, as if we had just landed from Mars, aliens in our own land. Staggering prejudice, breathtaking arrogance, and of course enough ambiguity in it to be open to interpretations, to ensure Arab support against the Ottoman Empire at the time. And I mean by deliberate ambiguity of purpose and the arrogance and execution here of that plan against the indigenous population. All of these attitudes I just described has informed the Balfour Declaration. All of these attitudes, mindsets, still prevail in the way Israel acts now, today. Elimination, number one, elimination of the native population. Right? It's happening as we speak. In Sheikh Jarrah, in Silwan, in Hebron, in Khalil, in Nablus, everywhere. Number two, negation of our existence at large. Number 3, denial of our rights. Complete, wholesale denial of our rights. Number 4, misrecognition of our collective being. Remember the nation-state law that the Knesset passed only a couple of years ago? It's complete misrecognition and denial of the collective rights of the Palestinian people. All that originated where? Where? In the Balfour Declaration. And number 5, that declaration has given a European Jewish supremacy over Palestine. Supremacy. Which is still alive until this very moment. And therefore, my friends, the declaration's relegation of the rights of the non-Jewish population led directly to the Nakba of my parents and your parents. And I see Ali, and I see many people here who have actually been affected directly by the Nakba. That declaration has led to the 1948 catastrophe. That declaration also directly led to the occupation of 1967 and the settlement project, the illegal colonial settlement project that saw the land as a legitimate object of conquest. And it has led directly to the situation that obtains today, in which Israel has become a system of apartheid. Apartheid. Full-fledged apartheid, which has different legal codes, one for the occupier and one for the occupied, one for the colonizer and one for the colonized, one for the oppressor and one for the oppressed. If you go to the UN, they will tell you this is exactly the definition of apartheid. So, distinguished guests and friends, the colonial attitudes prevails today, and not just in Israel. It was very much in evidence in the so-called ultimate deal of the Trump administration. Remember the deal of the century of Trump? That once again did not see us, the Palestinian people, as deserving of political rights in a state of our own. It all goes back to where? To the spirit, between two parentheses, of the Balfour Declaration. The spirit of the Balfour Declaration is therefore very much alive, very much with us up until this very moment. In fact, in some ways, the Balfour Declaration has superseded Britain's other achievements in the international arena. The UK, after all, my friends, was one of the prime architects of the global-based order system that was properly installed after the World War II to ensure that no such senseless slaughter would ever happen again. And yet, Israel, as the international community, the whole world is following, is doing its very best to undermine that very order. Israel has been in constant breaker of international law, has been in open contravention of numerous UN Security Council resolutions, international humanitarian law. I see many lawyers here. They know better than I do. Not only has Israel proven itself a serial offender, it has actually been protected in its offending by the very states. The very states. That's the colonial mindset I was just talking about. It has been protected by the very states that have established the global order, that have established these rules. The law, the international law. It has been protected by the guarantors of international legality. Yes, most countries in the world, my friend, and we are in the Western Hemisphere, including Britain, say they want Israel's occupation of the 1967 territory to end. They all say that. And pay lip service to the internationally sanctioned right of return of the Palestinian refugees. That's the policy of European countries, including the United Kingdom, of the US, etc. But only action speaks volumes, my friends. Where is accountability? This is the key pillar of international law and international system. When will Israel's constant and blatant violations of international law spanning many, many decades spark a reaction from the international community? I think this is the question that many Palestinians and our friends ask today. When there will be real actions that will end the Israeli impunity, and impunity, let me remind you, that has brought nothing but war crimes on a daily basis, including this morning, Israel shooting and killing a child near Nablus, Muhammad. Every day there is a war crime. Every day Israel enjoys impunity. And not only in the form of murder that happens against our people on a daily basis, but of the illegal settlements, of the population transfer, of the violence, of the imprisonments of children, of the demolitions of houses, of the theft of our land and natural resources. Right now, 2 courageous, imprisoned Palestinian hunger strikers are putting their lives at risk as we speak to protest the grossly inhumane Israeli practice of administrative detention. You know what's administrative detention? It is a detention without charge or trial. And they can hold them indefinitely. They are protesting that gross illegality by using their bare bodies. More than 100 days and their lives are at jeopardy. These are the kind of human rights violations we are talking about. This is the kind of impunity we are describing that has been implanted from 1970. So we are saying today, enough. This meeting by the leaders of our community, the representative of the Palestinian community, by our friends, the British friends of Palestine, in the parliament, in the civil society, in the solidarity movement, is a popular movement that has one main message: enough. And that's why I am here with inspiration and pleasure. Enough. We want reparations, restitution, redress, not only an apology, but a recognition of the wrongs of the past and a recognition of the reality of today. And we want action. We want action and demand action. It is time for Britain to atone. Britain can lead the world on principle, the principles laid down in the global system. Let us not forget this is a country that prides itself on its sense of fairness. The United Kingdom prides itself on its sense of fairness. One former foreign secretary of great integrity even proposed that he proudly call it an ethical foreign policy. Our good friend Robin Koch, if some of you remember him, the ethical foreign policy. He had enough integrity to resign when he felt that principle had been transgressed by his own government. Principle, honor principle, is what we are calling for, my friends, from the United Kingdom. This country has already had 3 historic opportunities to amend, to atone, to correct. In 2012, when we went to the United Nations seeking UN membership and recognition, the UK missed. In 2014, when the UK Parliament voted overwhelmingly with the recognition of the State of Palestine, the UK government of the time took no action. In 2017, the centenary, the 100 years of the Balfour Declaration, was such an opportunity for the United Kingdom to recognize the wrongs of the past and to amend. Nothing. To the contrary, what we saw in 2017 was more salt in the wounds of the Palestinian people, in the millions who have lost their homes and farms and ended up being refugees, in the millions who have been subjected to the military occupation since the Balfour Declaration, in the millions in Gaza, the 2 millions who have been under siege for all these years. They've put more salts in that wound. Today, my friends, present another opportunity for the UK government by the people of the UK. And this opportunity shall not be missed. We want the UK to recognize the State of Palestine. It's long overdue. Apologize to the Palestinian people. And we demand that the UK impose accountability, consequences on the illegalities and practices by Israel. Given the situation on the ground, my friends, and here I'll end, it is no longer a question of if not now, when. It is a question of if not now, never. Given the situation that Abu Rabiha just came from Palestine, if not now, never. And yet, for all that the situation is bleak, perhaps very bleak, the most important lesson of today, of this event, is this. 104 years since the Balfour Declarations, my friend. 104 years since that declaration. 104 years since the untold misery and pain and suffering of the Palestinian people who have been treated, and we have been treated shamefully. We are still here. We are still there. We are still fighting for our rights, for dignity, for equality, and our struggle has been passed down from a generation, from a generation to another. The real lesson is this: the Palestinian people will never give up until we have justice. We will not give up until we have justice. If peace is not premised on justice, then it is just another call for the continuation of our negation, of our denial. Peace has to be premised on the notion of justice. And if we don't have justice, my friends, our children will get it, or their children after them. We, the Palestinian people, and with us all our British and international friends, will never give up and will continue the struggle. Thank you very much.